Hey everybody, Kofuku's back, and today we're going to be talking about No Man's Sky. If you've been on the internet or been following it at all, you'll notice a lot of complaints, and a lot of them are the wrong ones. People are complaining about multiplayer, and it was never a multiplayer game. And you can pull up interviews of him talking about the way multiplayer would work. And it was never once said that it would be a traditional multiplayer. And it was constantly said that you'd almost never run into other people playing the game. Specifically quoted at an almost zero chance. So I'm really not understanding the complaints at this point. It was never marketed that way. You did that. The fans of what you wanted it to be. You guys made this image in your head of what you thought it was going to be, despite what the interview said. And I know Murray was pretty vague when discussing the game, and so it's a little bit of his fault. But it's not like he said, oh yeah, you're gonna have like super space battles and you're gonna be fighting each other. He said it is a largely single player experience. You might find traces of other people, like there's stuff they've named, and that's something you can do. I've yet to find anything anyone else has discovered yet, but that's just my experience. Some of my friends have found already discovered star systems, and so what? It was always supposed to be a single player experience. I don't think that multiplayer would make it a different experience or a better one. I think it would make it worse. There's a lot of shit multiplayer survivor games, even ones that take place in space, and they are terrible, largely, and No Man's Sky has avoided a lot of the issues that are associated with those and actually made an experience, but people won't try it because people don't know what they want, and that's a real issue here. People say, oh, I want all these things. It's like, well, there's a game with all those things, and that game's terrible. And it's just the fact of the matter that people think they want this thing. People won't say, no, I know that game's terrible, but I want something exactly like that, but good. And the problem is, those specific qualifiers to make it a game like that are what make it bad. Stop trying to make the same shit game over again. It's not what we need. People need to be taking bigger risks. And I am not saying No Man's Sky is good or perfect. I mean, I've sunk a lot of time into it. I enjoy it, okay? But it has a lot to improve upon. And that's where we get into the point of the right complaints to be having. There's complaints about, good ways to store stuff. I think, there could be something at space stations, like an intergalactic storage thing, where you can store a few items that you don't have access to except at space stations, blah blah blah, but you can store stuff and keep it, which I think that would be good. But they're working on something with freighter ships and stuff, so it's possible that that could come up with something for a storage solution, so it's not quite so having to make a choice between everything, because there may not be a planet in the next system that has the right material you need on it, and that's just the way it is. That's an RNG trap that a lot of these procedural games fall into. John Murray is not a public speaker. He is a programmer. And it's important to remember that this is a team of 13 people. 13 people made this game. You can't expect them to pump out stuff as fast as you want them to, or unrealistic expectations of what they're getting. And that's a real problem with a lot of games. A lot of games aren't bad, but they're not what people expected to be getting. And it's not even the fault of advertising most of the time. It's the hype train around it. There's a real problem. There's the graphical downgrade, for instance. That was something that was actually different than the trailers. Even the most recent trailers that they had right before launch. You know, there was an issue there. You know, most of the animals don't look that good. And I mean, there are planets that look good. There are there are animals that work out well from the procedural generation, and it tends to be closer to the center that a lot of the better stuff spawns. And it's just the nature of the system. There are real problems of the repetitive nature of a lot of it, but stop asking the wrong questions. Quit bitching about things like multiplayer when it was never a multiplayer game. That's the one thing I'm sick of hearing about. I didn't want multiplayer. If you did, sorry, you're a moron for thinking that it was going to be there. Because it's not what he said, it's what you heard, what you thought he was saying. And you gotta kind of take a step back and think about it. And think about what you're thinking he's saying versus what he's actually saying. And don't let what you want cloud your opinions before you get it in your hands. Just get your hands on it, borrow it from a friend, play it a bit, and try it out. Just, you can't sit there and watch a gameplay video about it or whatever and think you know everything about the game. There's a reason games are not movies. Because you play them. You play them. That's the whole point of a game. So borrow it, rent it, play it, and then form your own opinion. Not just off one person's experience or one person's gameplay video. Make your own conclusions.